Luton Town round off 2023 with a home game against Moneybags Chelsea at lunchtime on Saturday. Huge game, and will probably give us a first reflection of exactly how much we've improved from the start of the season. To preview the game with me, I've got the Lutonian journalist James Cunliffe, and I've got Town fan Dan Barratt-Davis. Gents, ready for this one?
Yeah, can't wait to reverse that early season defeat.
Always ready for a home game.
Here's the intro.
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got these massive souls.
We're Luton people, and that's what we care about.
Hello everyone, welcome along to another episode of the Luton Town Supporters Trust podcast, the longest running Luton Town podcast, and the only one to go from League 2 to the Premier League. You won't sing that, Chelsea fans, will you? We are going to preview Chelsea at home. If you haven't realised, 12:30 kickoff on Saturday, TNT Sports if you haven't got a ticket. If you have, don't turn up at 3 o'clock, you'll have missed what we hope will be Luton's third successive top flight win in a row. James, where are we with this one? Obviously, this is the first time Chelsea have been to Kenilworth Road since they were champions of Europe, might even have been champions of the world at that point, actually, in the FA Cup 21 months ago. That was a brilliant night. Since then, we've been down to their place, and they probably did a bit of a job on us. Probably the only decent game they've played, actually, this season. Certainly Raheem Sterling. Are we going to see more of that cup game on Saturday, or dare we say, are we going to see more of that league experience?
Oh, definitely more of the cup game. Yeah, it's going to be. It's going to be a hell of an afternoon. That one, I think. Just the amount of improvement that's gone into Luton since that day at Stamford Bridge has been remarkable. They've not particularly kicked on. You know, they did a nice job in beating Crystal Palace the other night, but they got Pochettino in, spent £500 million or whatever it was, ridiculous amount of money, to be in the Champions League, and they're nowhere near it at the moment. So if Luton can capitalise on their sort of up and down form, but particularly not very good away from home this season, whereas Luton in the last couple of months have been fantastic at home, and definitely against bigger sides than Chelsea, better sides than Chelsea, then it's all sort of set up to be a fantastic afternoon.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, quick reflection on that cup game, Dan, from sort of 21 months ago. Obviously, Reece Burke opened scoring for us. Saul Niguez scored the equaliser for Chelsea. Harry Cornick put us ahead just before half time. Then we kind of faded, didn't we, on a wet, horrible night. And Timo Werner, of all people, scored. And then Romelu Lukaku. Since then, like James said, they spent best part of £1 billion and got worse. But that was a great night, wasn't it? I mean, that was the night that whilst we were trying our hardest to get out of the Championship, it made you think of what could happen if we got into the Premier League, as we've seen.
Yeah, it helped us to dream a little bit, didn't it? I think Chelsea fans, some Chelsea fan made money out of selling T-shirts with I've seen Werner and Lukaku score for Chelsea on them, which is a brilliant bit of marketing. Well done. And you know, we weren't, if I remember rightly, we didn't put a full strength side out ourselves. I know Jed Steer started the game, and then his Achilles gave way, so Oysted had to step in for his second game ever, I think, and
played very well as well. Very
well. He was unlucky to concede the goals he conceded. There was nothing he could have done about the Niguez one early on. The second, and the other two were silly tap-ins that should have been dealt with. But all in all, it was a brilliant night. You know, I remember going 1-0 up. I think it was first 2 minutes. A typical Luton goal, cross in, header across everyone. Wake up, you're in a game. And it was brilliant. And then obviously they got back into it. Cornick scored again. He just completely ran through. There was a nice little bit of play, I think, between Osho. I think Osho was playing a holding midfielder that night, and we all thought that was going to be his position. But plays a 1-2 with Mendes Gomez, and then knocks it onto Cornick, and it was brilliant goal. And if you'd seen Harry Cornick every week like we have, you'd have thought, he's ballooning that. It's going in the back gardens in Oak Road. But no, fair play, he stuck it away nicely, and it allowed you to dream. We went in at half time thinking, we've just got to somehow hold this and kill the game off, which beforehand you'd have been lucky to see us get a goal in the first place, I think, given how Chelsea are set up, and the size of the club, and etc., all these big millionaire players, and we made them look silly for the first hour of the game, I think. Just wasn't to be in the end.
No, it wasn't. Tuchel was their manager then, wasn't he? And whatever's happened to him, gone on to Bayern Munich and bigger and better things. Chelsea then, James. If we win on Saturday, that's their worst calendar year in the Premier League era. I think it would be a 24th defeat. 24 defeats in a year. I mean, that's good going for anyone, let alone one that spent £1 billion. But you can see it happening. I mean, there's 4 away games on the trot that they've lost. They've lost at Newcastle. You wonder how the hell they've done that based on what recently has happened with Newcastle. They've lost at Man United. You wondered at the time how they did that, and you're still wondering that. They've lost at Everton yet again. How? And at Wolves on Sunday, they were bad. I mean, they lost 2-1, but they could have lost that any number that they wanted to. They don't seem to be firing on any cylinders, let alone all cylinders, particularly away from home.
Yeah, it's not been good away from home. I think, just 4 wins all season for a team.
3 wins.
Is it 3? Yeah, 3. I'm doing them a better service than they're doing themselves.
At Fulham, at Burnley, and against, that kamikaze Tottenham side on the night when they wanted everyone to get sent off, and 2 managed it, and it was it's a weird game of football, that. Apart from that, no joy.
Yeah, and they're not going to find it easy coming to Kenilworth Road, because no team has so far. I mean, we all know the story that Luton have run Liverpool, Arsenal and Man City and Tottenham really close, beat Newcastle. So they're not going to like it, especially if they come with any sort of attitude that it was a walkover last time. It was, really. The scoreline says it, but Luton are a different animal from that time at the beginning of this season and the times that you've just spoken about in the FA Cup. Completely different animal. And they're not going to relish coming to Kenilworth Road one bit. So, I'm really hopeful that Luton can get something from the game. There's that stat that it was 32 years to the day that Luton won back-to-back top flight games. That was the other day. And back then in 1991, the third game, which they also won, was Chelsea at home. So it'd be a lovely bit of deja vu from 32 years ago, really. And that stat you mentioned, that they're on their sort of worst run of form in the Premier League era in terms of defeats, it stretches back to 78 as well. So even before my lifetime, that's how sort of poor they've really been doing, considering the amount of players and money that's gone through that club, really. I'm really looking forward to it, because I think that they're going to be in for a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think so too. The thing that we should sort of get out of the way straight away, we've had sort of 30 hours recovery time on them, and at this time of year, that's no bad thing. That's certainly one thing that's in our sort of favour. And I'm racking my brains about that Chelsea side that played in the Cup, and I don't think there's many that's going to play on Saturday that played in that game. So they're all kind of new to Kenilworth Road, I mean, they've basically brought a whole new 11 since then, haven't they? And
then some, yeah.
Yeah, so that was my worry. Oh, they've experienced Kenilworth Road on a hostile night. They'll know what to expect. Well, actually, they won't, because none of the players that are going to play on Saturday, or very, very few, maybe 1 or 2 are on the bench or something, have experienced it. So we've still got that in our favour, which has carried us so well in the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't mind the big clubs saying, "Oh, we just got to show up and get the result. Do it." Like James said, write us off all you want. We're gonna give you a game. And you're right. I think Chelsea are going through a huge transitional period, as they call it in football, where new manager, new owner, new manager, whole new set of players, new set of ideas, a whole load more, millions and millions and millions spent. Overspent probably. And you're coming up against a side that hasn't ever had the luxury of some of the figures we've been talking about on, like, you know, like Mudrich and Casado, for example. I mean, the amount of money they've spent on them two alone, I don't think Luton have ever had that amount of money
No.
turnover in their entire history, or even close.
No chance.
And what I love more about when we do beat these teams is that we're turning over these teams on pence in comparison, because, you know, they spend hundreds of millions of pounds every year. We spend a couple of million and we're beating teams and showing that money means fuck all, which is great.
It does, yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you think that they've got new ideas, because from the outside looking in, it don't look like they've got any idea, is it?
Well, it might be the same idea. That's only Luton.
Well, let's hope that is the case. That's for sure. Threats based on the away game, there's one massive threat. I don't know if Raheem Sterling turned into peak Lionel Messi just for the one night, or if he has actually played well all season. But he was bloody good that night, and we could do with him coming down a peg or three for this one. He's not one of those players that potentially might be jaded after a game on Wednesday night, because he was suspended for that game, so he's had his feet up, which is also annoying. But if you're looking for dangers and men to stop Chelsea playing, you start number one with him.
You do, especially after his performance at Stamford Bridge. But I also think that what he did on that night was him at his best. And maybe a lot of teams wouldn't stop that. But I think it also gave Luton a very quick example of what big players can do if you let them. But ever since then, you can look to, Liverpool, where Salah wasn't in the game at all. That's a credit to Luton. You can look at Arsenal, where Saka wasn't in the game really. Man City, even though they had a lot of the ball, the likes of Grealish didn't really do a lot of it. I know he scored, but that was...
He was restricted a lot, wasn't he?
Yeah, big time. And I think that what Raheem's performance did then on that night was give Luton an idea of how they need to be to stop these players. Now stopping them if they're in full flight is a different matter. But the way Luton have gone about it against these teams in the last month, 6 weeks, has been exemplary. They really have managed to quieten down some world superstars, and that's hopefully what you're going to get at Kenilworth Road.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what's been coming for the last sort of 6 weeks, 2 months, or more than that. I mean, there's all this sort of clamour for Sterling to be in the England squad. Like that's I say, he was brilliant against us. But really and truly, you look at his stats, and I mean, kind of padded against the poorer sides, apart, the Fulhams and the Burnleys of this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's perhaps unfair to say that when you consider the career he's had and the top player he has been for all these years, from a very early age as well. He burst onto the scene, 10 years ago? And it almost feels like he's been around forever. But he's only, 27, 28, I think. And he has always had that quality about him. He was in a very good Liverpool side, Man City side that dominated English football for a long time as well. I feel like he's the main man at Chelsea at the moment, and perhaps not really easy with that. I think he was happy being amongst all the bigger stars with him and sort of shining that way, because they were allowing him to sort of be more his own, whereas at Chelsea he's kind of relied upon, I think.
He looked like he relished it at Stamford Bridge against Luton, mind you.
Well,
he hasn't managed the consistency, not from a player of his elite level.
No, you wonder whether it's down to a couple of injuries he's had, or maybe the role he's been asked to do. I'm admittedly not seen a lot of Chelsea, so I can't really comment too much on that. But I'd imagine a lot of players' forms is down to what they've been asked to do, because players don't become crap overnight. They become different and they perhaps don't relish the new role quite so much that they've been given because it's not natural to them.
An awful lot of them do seem to become crap overnight when they go to Chelsea, though, it has to be said. And we've got someone in our own squad who's testament to that, who thankfully has refound himself again. We've got to keep Sterling quiet. We've got to keep another former Manchester City player quiet, who also annoyingly was suspended on Wednesday night, and that's Cole Palmer. Now, I'm in two minds with this one. They've spent big on him, so they must like him, and I get that, and I can see why he's already in the England squad. Every time you see Chelsea play well, he's played well. But then on the other hand, I'm like, well, if he was that good, in inverted commas, Pep wouldn't have sold him. So I don't know which way I'm leaning so far, but I'm probably leaning on he looks a pretty good player and we need to stop him.
Yeah, I really like the look of him and what he's doing at such an early age. I think it was more that he wanted to get game time, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was.
I don't think it was the Raheem Sterling situation where obviously Pep had seen something in him that wasn't as elite as he wanted him to be at Manchester City, which is remarkable considering the amount of goals he used to score for them. But a different situation with Palmer, I think, where he desperately wanted to play regular football, and you've got to credit anybody with that attitude, because you go back to as far as Cam McGeehan, who left them to come to Luton. Or did he do Norwich? I always forget he left Norwich. He was at Chelsea to start with, went to Norwich, then left them to come to Luton, way down in the lower leagues to play football, and then he ended up going into Europe and playing top level football in Belgium. I think he was playing. So
now he's playing top level football at Colchester.
Yeah, now he is. But everybody praised that sort of attitude back then. I remember a couple of big feature pieces on him written in the national newspapers about that, because he was a FA Youth Cup winning player, and it's not doesn't tend to be the usual route these days. But it's not that extent with Cole Palmer. Obviously, he's gone from a Premier League team to a Premier League team, but he's gone from the all-conquering champions of everything, with a caveat, an asterisk.
Look back on previous podcasts.
With an asterisk. To Chelsea, who want to be that team again, but the amount of money they've chucked at it, and the amount of players that have gone through there, the churn they've had, it hasn't happened. But you could well see, I think, that Cole Palmer could be the talisman in seasons to come if he carries on playing like he does. So he's definitely a man you've got to keep tabs on.
Yeah, he really is. And as I say, he'll be fresh as well, having been suspended for the Crystal Palace game in midweek for a third threat. I mean, usually you'd go with the centre forward, but if you watch Jackson in that Crystal Palace game, you kind of hope he plays, really. So we'll go with Nkunku. There was a lot spoken about him, wasn't there, when they signed him, but then he picked up a serious injury out in America in pre-season. Didn't really see him. I think he came on for the first time against Wolves, and then he started against Crystal Palace. I don't know if he starts. I don't know if he's ready to start 2 games in 3 days. I suspect he's not. So the longer he can stay on the bench, the better. But when he was at Leipzig last season, he looked very, very good in the Champions League in the games that I saw. And not all players that come out of the Bundesliga are particularly great. Chelsea know that from experience with Werner, but he does look like someone who could be good coming out of the Bundesliga.
It could be, and he's quite young as well, isn't he? Again, he's another one you can he's young enough that you can sort of develop into a Premier League player in terms of like the league, different country sort of thing. I'm not saying he's not a Premier League, but clearly he's a Premier League player given the money they spent on him. But yeah, had he not got injured, you'd have seen a lot more of him. I can't really say too much about him because I know next to nothing, I'm afraid.
I mean, they'll probably still will have Jackson because he's a 10 rather than an out-and-out striker. I don't know whether that's how they brought him as such, because, they were just flinging money at the wall and hoping something stuck at the time, weren't they? But it suggests to me that he'll be a 10 if and when he plays. So he's going to be a clever player. Hopefully, as I say, he stays on the bench for as long as possible. Because, international football are really, like I say, really, really good in the Bundesliga, one of the star talents in the Bundesliga. And if he's anywhere like that form, he's going to be a good asset to them.
He is. I was going to say that I do hope that Jackson plays instead, but considering the stick I gave to Ollie McBurney before the Sheffield United one, and then he went and scored. I was shut up about that, really. So I hope that if either of those two play, they have absolute stinkers because they just cannot cope with the cauldron that is Kenilworth Road.
Yep, let's hope that is the case. Let's swing it round then to Luton. As always, we're doing this before Rob's pre-match press conference, as particularly in light of the early kickoff, so we can get this out to you so that you can watch it before you leave for the game. I think we're all pretty certain there'll be no Marvellous Nakamba. The vibes that we picked up at Sheffield United were that his knee injury is a little bit more serious than's been let on. Maybe they don't even know the full extent of it yet, actually. And if they don't know the full extent of it on Tuesday, they're sure as hell not going to know the full extent of it on a Saturday, given all the...
I think it's a recurrence thing as well, isn't it? Because he got that 60 minutes against Man City when he came back off the international break, which is where he got it, and managed to play 60, and then maybe had a reaction to that. After that, obviously, he was suspended for the Bournemouth game and then consequently suspended for the Newcastle game because of what happened with Tom Lockyer and that game getting abandoned. So, we talked about, we was hoping to see him and hoping to see him with Barkley and Lokonga in a 3, perhaps, and that's not going to happen, obviously, now. So I think, I would be very surprised if he's anywhere near the squad for Chelsea.
Especially in light of the fact that January is so quiet. Why risk him when you've got, nice sort of space in the calendar that we can get players up to full fitness and things. The other one that we don't know about, Issa Kabore missed the game at Sheffield United. Obviously, in light of like Christmas and everything, pre-match interviews and stuff didn't really take place. So no one really kind of divulged the information on Issa Kabore, but he was on the bench at the end of that game, and he did walk around, and you saw him walking up the tunnel on that behind the scenes thing, and he didn't look too badly injured. So I'm hoping that maybe he'll be fit to return, and that would be handy, particularly in light with the fact that Sterling plays down the left-hand side for them now. So if we can have Kabore's pace matching that up, that might be a little bit better than down there where we had Giles's not so quick pace to, he kind of walked past him a couple of 3 times, didn't he?
Yeah, he did, and I think like we've said before, I think we were still finding the feet then as well, and Giles in particular was as well. It was quite a huge step up for us to make, which we seem to have closed that step down a little bit. Kabore, you want him available, fit and ready to play, like Marvellous. I'm not too concerned if he doesn't play. Obviously, and that's nothing against him at all. I think he's a terrific player. But I just think Alfie Doughty's untouchable down that side, even down that side at the moment. If you give Giles another 90 minutes on the left, then Doughty's going to start on the right, isn't he? If Kabore's not quite ready.
He is, yep. Hopefully Kabore is ready, though, because this will be his last league game for quite a while, because he's off to the Africa Cup of Nations. I don't know if he's off before the FA Cup game, but I suspect he's not going to play in the FA Cup game anyway. So this will be his last Luton game for a while, if indeed he's fit to play that. Let's assume that he is, and that Doughty goes back to the left-hand side instead of Giles. Is there any other team changes that you'd like to see from that Sheffield United game?
I don't think that he will make them, to be honest, because they performed so well for those 2 games. He'll stick with them, and I don't think there is any reason to make them. After that first half performance, which is absolutely dominant at Bramall Lane, and even the way that they fought back, the one player, I guess you could say, well, actually 2, really. You could say Morris is a good shout of starting it again, and maybe that is more of a likelihood because of the amount of games over the Christmas period and the close proximities. I could see that possibly happening as an option. I still don't think it will. And then Mads Anderson, who came on and played so well, but I think he's more going to be eased back in. I think he's performed so well when he's come off the bench the last couple of games. So we'll see with that one. But no, I think he'll go relatively unchanged.
Yeah, I think Mads Anderson was the obvious one. The one thing I would say is there's no physicality to this Chelsea front line, is there? It's more pace and trickery rather than an Ollie McBurney or sort of Isak type. It's more sort of small and skillful, isn't it? And maybe Bell, Osho and Mengi are better suited with their pace to deal with that than Mads. Maybe again, hopefully we're ahead like we were in the last 2 games, and Mads comes off the bench to park the bus and put the brick wall up.
Yeah, possibly. It was clear that was what he was brought on to do against Newcastle and against Sheffield United as well. And it's good to have him back as well. Like James said, and I think it was in the last podcast, like the look of him. Really like the look of him. And I think in time he will start games, but I can't see who you're taking out at the moment, because all 3 centre-halves that are currently playing have been absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Gabe Osho has impressed me probably the most out of that lot. Who'd have thought when we signed him on a free from Reading during lockdown, when he went on loan somewhere, didn't he? I can't remember.
Rochdale, I think
was
it
it
was.
Rochdale?
Yeah.
And
We're in the conference now.
Well, yeah, I mean, he was brought in as a development player, and you sort of thought, well, he's going on loan to Rochdale. Is he going to get game time? I think he played an FA Cup game, and apparently did really well. I couldn't see it because the broadcast rights were given to somewhere else.
Mongolia.
Yeah, because they need to see it more than we do, clearly. But he's come on leaps and bounds, and going from that to the player he is now, he's just absolutely fantastic, absolutely brilliant. And again, I've said it in a million podcasts before, you want competition all over the park, and in defence, I think we're very strong. Obviously, if Reece Burt can go more than 3 games without his legs snapping, that'd be brilliant as well, because he's another one in there. Locks before his heart problems as well. And don't forget, you still got Amari Bell and Ted Mengi, who's probably one of the best cheap signings we've had in a long time.
Shout out for Amari Bell as well, I think, since he's been given the captain's armband. Yeah. He in that period where Luton, I thought, were done for after Sheffield United took the lead, he was fantastic, and more in attacking sense, really, getting out of defence and trying to make things happen. So, yeah, I think the responsibility seems to work for him. Back
role, which I think I've spoken to him about it before, because I asked him about it at the end of season. I said, "Do you like playing centre half?" He says, "I'll play wherever." He says, "But I do prefer playing left wing back," which would suit him because he can get up and down the channels and he's quick, and we all know how good he is at that. Like you say, he's been brilliant since he stepped in as captain, and it's almost as if he was a natural defender, centre half.
Yeah, it is. Morris or Eli up front? Any preference?
No preference, really. I think we went with Morris at the bridge, didn't we?
We did, yep.
From memory, he did give the Chelsea defenders a little bit of trouble, but Elijah's started doing that now as well. I'm not one for changing a team unless you absolutely have to. I think barring a knock or anything that Elijah gets between now and kick-off, I wouldn't change it so much now. And it's harsh on Morris because he's come on at Sheffield United and made 2 goals out of nothing. When he does come on, he's a big presence and you really feel it. But yeah, I can't see it. I can't see it changing.
Yeah, you'd be surprised if Chelsea is stupid enough to score 2 goals for us. But hey, if you want to, Chelsea, feel free. We'll gladly accept it. That's for sure. Chio?
Yeah, another great shout, really, because of his performance when he came on. I mean, maybe there's more of a case if Kabori doesn't play and there's a bit of changing around on the flanks, but he's been such an impact, really, coming off the bench. Really, I mean, it's Sheffield United definitely, but at Newcastle just gave that sense that they weren't getting back into that game because
he turned into peak Cody Dramé, didn't he? Winning throw-ins and getting a crowd going and everything else. Cody Dramé against Sunderland, I'm sure everyone remembers that.
Yeah, he still should have squared it.
He's let it go. He's a great threat. And the one thing that we haven't said is we don't know Ryan Giles' status either. He seemed to be limping at Bramall Lane when he came over to address the Luton fans. So if that's something that's lingered, then Chio could possibly be the right wing back with Doughty left back in the way that we finished at Sheffield United. But I think all in all, we're kind of happy, unless players are back, similar side to that Sheffield United game, and indeed the one before at Newcastle.
Isn't that this whole conversation? Isn't that wonderful to have the confidence in every player, whether they play in or not? We've got if the players that we've mentioned who we're thinking may come in, there's a possibility, but if they're not, they're on the bench. that's a great bench to bring off against anybody, and it has shown.
Yeah, I mean,
in recent weeks.
I thought our bench against Newcastle was as good. I mean, there are many times you'd take that as your first team as for Luton. You know, I've dreamed of Luton's first team being that good. Now it's our bench, you know. I mean, you look at Sheffield United and indeed Newcastle, I guess. He's made 5 changes against Newcastle. Jordan Clark and Tahith Chong are sat on the bench watching, when's it my turn? He's made 5 changes against Sheffield United, and again, Chong's on the bench, Corley Woodrow's on the bench, Luke Berry's on the bench, all hugely influential players over the course of 2023. And yeah, I mean, when he spoke about competition for places and headaches, you know, he needs plenty of aspirin because he's got plenty of headaches, hasn't he? That is for sure. Right, where do we get at Chelsea? We always like to look at this. I'm thinking back to recent Chelsea games, and the one that sticks in my mind most recently was against Newcastle in the Cup when Wilson just put even the slightest bit of pressure on Badir Shearley.
Well done.
I've probably completely butchered his name, but not as much as he butchered clearing the ball on that occasion and tripped over his own feet, turned into Badir shite, really. And he strikes me as someone that you've got to go at. He wasn't particularly good against Wolves either. They're going to bring Thiago Silva in, aren't they? That's an obvious. They're going to bring him in from... He sat out on Wednesday night, obviously, at 39 years old. He can't do 3 games, and that's absolutely understandable. So you're going to have him, and then alongside him, you're either going to have Badir Shearley or, I mean, Dizazi, I think, but he's more disaster than Dizazi. And whoever it is alongside Silva, he's not, you know, he's the one who's got to be targeted, isn't he? Because I thought Silva had Morris absolutely in his pocket at their place. I haven't seen a defender control Carlton Morris.
But since
before.
Thiago Silva's not looked like the all-conquering player that he has been in that game and in his career. He's had some howlers recently.
Seems to be a Chelsea thing. But you can get at this defence though, can't you? I mean, you look at the goals they've conceded. I mean, Newcastle put 4 past them based on what we saw of them in front of our eyes, and against Notts Forest, you wonder how. Man United only scored 2, but they could have had God knows how many more that night. And Everton have scored against them. Wolves, again, missed a lot of chances. To be fair, their boy in goal, who's replaced Sanchez, Petrovic, I saw a lot of him in the MLS. He's very, very good. I like him as a goalkeeper. He'll be hard to beat.
Yeah, he will.
But if you go at the centre-backs, and actually the left-back, it's Levi Colwill, isn't it, who's the left-back?
Yes,
who's stolen Alfie Doughty's England caps in the last England international.
That's a big club thing, that.
He's another one that we can get at, isn't he? You look if you saw the Crystal Palace goal, and I'm sure you have done by now. I don't know what he's trying to head, but it certainly ain't the ball that's coming over. And Elise's behind him, and he's like, "Hello, I'll just control this and tap it in." And we've got Andros Townsend in the exact same position, who's every bit as technically good as Michael Elise. Get that ball over his kind of head, and let's see what can come from it.
Yeah, and hopefully he hasn't learned from his mistakes, and that exact move happens again. Because we've got that in our locker. We've seen, like, from the Newcastle game and from Sheffield United as well, the balls that Barkley and Lokonga are spraying out wide, getting them in the wide areas, are putting these defenders on the back foot, drawing them out, and then overlapping, drawing them out again, just pulling defenders out of position the way we're doing it. I think if they didn't realise it already, they're in for a game. They really are, and I think we can cause them problems. I don't think they're going to roll over as much as Chelsea fans may well think.
No, absolutely. And of course, as I say, it's not so much the recovery time, the lack of that they've had. It's the lack of preparation time, because, you know, they'll have been putting all their eggs into getting a win against Crystal Palace, which they have done. But it's less than sort of, by the time they go back into training, because I'm assuming they'll have most of the following day off, that's less than 48 hours before they kick off against us. So to work on, like, tactics and things, because we are a whole different ball game to the Wolves and the Crystal Palaces of this world, to work on what we bring to the party, they're not going to have an awful lot of time. And I really think the wide areas will be important in this game, because you look through the middle, they're going to have Caicedo, who's supposedly like this incredibly strong defensive midfielder. They'll probably have Conor Gallagher somewhere through the middle. I don't know if Enzo Fernandez is fit just to complete the £100 million ones, but they've got Lavia as well, haven't they, who could play there. So whilst Ross Barkley's had, like, Rice and Rodri and Guimaraes and Hamer and all these other midfielders in his pocket, and he still ain't let them out. You just wonder if there is room for Caicedo and co in there. So maybe going wider is our best sort of form of attack, because Reece James is injured as well, isn't he? They'll have Gusto at right wing back or right back, depending on if they play 3 or 4. And that feels like the way to go.
It feels like the way to go against most sides, really. They really, really don't like going at them down there and chucking crosses into the box. And that's such a strength for Luton this season. Just carry on doing that, really. And it's great that if Chelsea haven't got that much time to prepare for that, and they haven't got a lot of time to just do lots of crossing and set piece drills, because that will gobble that up. I mean, they won't have seen that at the Bridge as well.
That's what I was going to say. It's a completely different threat to what we provided down there.
Absolutely.
I don't like to say we were out of our depth that night, because that's unfair because of the situation around it. We hadn't played for 2 weeks. We'd had one Premier League game going into it. But clearly we've grown into the league a hell of a lot more than we had done by that night. And we are we tried to kind of play the Premier League game, didn't we, that night? Keep the ball. And now we play the Luton game, and the Luton game's completely different. So I think that lack of preparation time really does help us in this game.
I think so. I really do. Yeah. They will expect to win, and as most teams have done, but surely now the message is getting across the Premier League that you don't go to Kenilworth Road and have it easy. And they've got to break down a team that's well drilled, have been pressing high and fantastically well. Even away now, that's coming in, but certainly at home. And there's probably another reason why you'd say you'd want to keep Elijah in, because he leads that from the attacking sense. And yeah, getting down the flank so well with Doughty and his ability to cross, and how well he's done this season. Townsend coming to the fore. If Chio does come on, that's an obvious route as well. It's remarkable that is such a weapon, when we were talking so much about Chio when he was playing, and he's obviously come out because of that little bit of injury, and it's not diminished. There's different attributes, obviously, because Chio would just run at you and knock it past you, and it's brilliant to watch. But Doughty's now still doing it, and that's what Townsend's done for his entire career. It's great to see, and more of that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if Ross Barkley's a prove you wrong kind of guy, but if he is, then he'll be bang up for this. I suspect he's not. I think he's just enjoying his football.
I think he's been low-key proving everyone wrong anyway, just by playing well. Not really of the mentality of, I'm going to show you. But the fact he's just been doing it.
The fact that they let him go, and does he have that point? I don't know. I mean, he did all right down there, didn't he? He was clearly nowhere near fit. That much was obvious, but
there was a lot of competition in midfield for places as well, wasn't there?
Yeah, and then they did have a strong midfield that night, didn't they? They had both. Caicedo made his debut, didn't he? And they had Fernandez, who played that night as well. But yeah, I mean, if he does want to prove a point against his former employers, be our guest, Ross. Just much of the same from what we've seen, really.
If we can have a go like he did against Newcastle when he hit the bar, just have it a couple of inches under, he's done it, hasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
that was reminiscent of what the Ross Barkley we know at Everton. And we've said it a million times on this podcast again. If we were getting 50% of him, we've got a decent player, and like I think you said in the last one, he's about at 80. I don't know if he is a prove your point kind of guy, like you say. I think like he is enjoying his football. He's just trying to get back, and because you can make a move in football and it not quite work out. Like the France one, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Clear that if he's left after a season, I think it was just a year he was there. It obviously wasn't for him and hadn't quite worked out. And you come to 29 and you think, well, hang on, I've played for England 30 times. I was playing for Chelsea in a good Chelsea side. Where's my next move? And nobody, I'm not having anybody tell me that Luton was the obvious place for him to go, because it wasn't. None of us saw it coming. As regards to playing his old club, I think it is just a case of I'm just going to show everybody that I'm enjoying playing my football, and I'm just going to show everyone that I am the player everybody thought I was before. But I'm just going to do it my way. If he scores, I can't see him running to the out road and rubbing it in on the fans. I don't think there's any reason to, really. Don't think he's that sort of player either.
No, I don't either. But if he wants to boss this midfield, it'll be great to watch, wouldn't it? Because, it's been great to watch all the midfields that he's bossed so far. Okay, we're just going to break into this episode of the podcast before we give you the score predictions and a look back on 2023. If you're a regular listener, you'll know that we like to be lighthearted on the podcast, and we hope that that encourages your enjoyment of it. But we just need to be serious for a moment. You'll have probably realised that the club were fined £120,000 for discrimination chant in the game at Brighton, where certain supporters used the words Chelsea rent boy. Obviously, we have Chelsea at home on Saturday, which, as we've already discussed, is going to be on television, both nationally in this country and internationally, which means that the eyes of the world are going to be on Kenilworth Road on Saturday. So we really, really, really don't want any repeats of any of that going on. Football is for everyone, as we've made a real case for in recent podcasts, and discrimination, chanting of any kind will not be tolerated. It can result in a criminal offence, so it could ruin your not just football experience, but your whole life if you're caught, and there is a real clampdown happening in the Premier League. So please, please, please don't sing any chants of any discrimination nature at all. If you don't know what you're singing, please just don't sing it. It's not worth the risk. We have so many great songs about the players that are on the pitch, about our wonderful manager. Please keep singing those as loud as you can. Make that atmosphere that you normally would do for any game, but just keep all the discrimination out of it. We don't need it. Nobody needs it. If we get found guilty of it again, the club are going to get fined even more money. And with the January window coming up, that could be the difference between signing a player even on loan until the end of the season and potentially staying up with it and not. So nobody wants to get into a situation where that's the case. So please, please, please make as much noise as you can on Saturday. Sing as many songs as you can, but keep them about our players, keep them about our manager, keep them about our wonderful club, and anything of a discriminatory nature, please just leave it well out. We do not need it. We need the atmosphere to be as positive and energetic on Saturday, but respectful to everyone that's on the pitch and in the stands. Thank you, and let's get back to the podcast. So we think, there's quite a few ways that we can get at this Chelsea side. Yes, there's threats that we need to contain. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely certain. But their away form is probably we looked at this month as a daunting month, didn't we? But, the Chelsea away form's making this one maybe the least daunting of them all so far. So does that equate into a Luton win for your score prediction, James?
Yep.
Next.
Yeah. I'm going to go for a 2-1, and just that stat about the last time they won 3 in a row at the top flight, that's doing bits for me, I think. And the fact that it's against Chelsea and it was back then at home, I think it's going to make Kenilworth Road's going to be up for this anyway, but there's something in there for me. Yeah.
I always had you down as a deja vu man, and there it is. Does it equate to a Luton win for you, Dan?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, I was going to say 2-1 as well, but I'm not going to just agree with James for just the sakes of it. So I've got to think of a different score. Yeah. I'm going to say 3-2 Luton. I think there'll be goals. I don't think it'll be pretty in terms of some of the defending we might see. But you never know, we might see a couple of belters as well. So, yeah, I'm confident of a home win purely based on the fact I'm pretty sure Chelsea will underestimate what they're up against.
I'll split the difference.
And knowing how we are.
Yeah, so I'll split the difference then. I'll go 3-1. I'm also confident of a home win here. More on that lack of preparation side than anything else. 7:30 kickoff on a Wednesday. I mean, Jurgen Klopp's moaned about this religiously, hasn't he? 7:30 kickoff on a Wednesday, and I know they were at home, but they still don't get out of the stadium much before 11 o'clock, and all, the adrenaline that goes through, you're probably not sleeping until the early hours of Thursday morning. This game starts at 12:30 on Saturday. It's just over 48 hours to come down and get yourself back. It's going to be so difficult for them players. And I know they're experienced of it, but not necessarily recently, because they've not played midweek games recently, have they? You know, they've not played any sort of Champions League level games this season or anything like that. So I really do think that's a big thing.
They're not robots either. I mean,
no, they're not.
Realistically, you probably have Thursday morning off, train a bit Thursday afternoon, then you've got a bit of training Friday morning, and then you jump in the hotel, which is bizarre because it's not that far really from West London.
You can kind of understand it with a 12:30 kickoff.
They do that as a religious thing anyway. So there's literally probably 2.5 days.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is nothing.
Exactly that.
Absolutely nothing.
And obviously before the Crystal Palace game, they'll have had Christmas, so they probably wouldn't have trained to a full schedule around Christmas. Why would you play Christmas Day? Why would you train Christmas Day if you haven't got a game Boxing Day sort of thing? And I really do think that could be a difference here. And Town are looking good in front of goal all of a sudden, aren't they? We're being clinical, and you never know, they might pop up and score one for us in Sheffield United style as well. So 3-1 for me. 2-1 for James, 3-2 for Dan. I must admit, I did like 3-2 as well. Got that Bournemouth game in my mind as a sort of 12:30 kickoff-y kind of. That was the first game of a year, wasn't it? This one's the last game of a year, but could be similar. What's your score predictions? Let us know in the comments or on social media. We'll read out any correct ones in a review podcast that we do. We're not sure if we're going to do a full review podcast next week. Obviously, if we do, it will be quite later into next week because we have New Year coming up. Or if we're going to do a flash one after the game, that'll all depend on whether I can get it sorted out inside the stadium and things. So do subscribe and you'll know when that drops and everything. So let us know your correct scores. Before we finish this podcast, this is the last full podcast of 2023, probably the last podcast of 2023 anyway, because I'm not going to ask James to post anything on New Year's Eve unless he particularly wants to. So let's have a quick reflection on what was a magnificent 12 months for Luton Town Football Club. Even at the start of it, James, and I'm as optimistic as anyone, if you'd said to me at the start of it, you're going to be watching Premier League football at the end of it, I'll have been like, yeah, I'm not overly sure. But what a 12 months. I mean, from start to finish, 2023 has been a magical year for Luton Town.
That's been my favourite.
And mine.
My absolute favourite calendar year following Luton. It's just been outstanding from the moment that, I know it was 2022, but the moment that Rob got that first win against Norwich and everything clicked then, and it just went, they just went on this mad run, didn't they? Where to the point where we thought that they would chase down Sheffield United. I mean, that didn't happen, and get in the playoffs. And then we all know what the playoffs used to be for Luton. Used to be, and this turned everything on its head. It just one of the best days, let alone football days. Just one of May 27th, 2023 was just up there with one of the best days. That just oh man, just smile all the time every time I think about it. It was just absolutely perfect in drama and anticipation and excitement and the result, and for triumph and in adversity, even more so now after, it's what's happened to Tom for a second time, albeit different issues with his heart, but how they managed to pull that out of the bag after that is just shows the character in this side, and it's carried on because we've never. I think only the Burnley game was one where we were pretty dejected. Every other one, even those first three games where we got quite comfortably beaten, you're thinking that they're doing all right. There's room for improvement. We were picking out things like that. So. And to get to this stage now where you've got the opportunity to finish off the year with 3 wins on the spin in the Premier League sounds really good, doesn't it? I mean, even the 2 that we've got already under the belt is remarkable. So, chalk it down. It's just one of those magical years.
Indeed. 2023 is a year I'll never forget as a Luton fan. Absolutely superb. Dan, it's had a derby win. Yep. It's had an incredible night in the playoffs. It's had an incredible afternoon in the playoffs. It's had 4 Premier League wins. It's been an absolute fantastic year. What is there a particular highlight for you of 2023?
It would be pretty textbook for me to say the Coventry playoff final. Obviously, living in Cov, bittersweet for me. Beating Watford is definitely up there, but that wasn't as much of a shock really. Just from and I'll never forget the warm up from both sides and the reception the Watford players got off us lot, and I really believe it rattled them. It proper rattled them, because I don't think half of them wanted to play for Watford anyway. Why would you? But to be known that you're hated so much because of the shirt you're wearing, I think it really got to them a little bit, and it ended up being quite a comfortable result in the end. The Sunderland game, I think, will go to my grave with me. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. Winning at Everton is probably my favourite one, because it was a win that I felt was coming, probably a bit overdue, because the performances had been there. The results hadn't quite gone in our favour, and the manner in which we'd done it as well. And set pieces, like Doughty's free kick across. I know it was the corner first, wasn't it? The corner first, and Lockie's got on a rebound and smacked it into the net, and then Morris volley from a Doughty free kick. Just the manner of that, it made us. It sort of confirmed to everybody else that we're starting to belong, and I still think we do belong here. It was absolutely brilliant, and to go from that, from the start of the year, where, like you said, the idea of playing in the Premier League was just crazy, really. I mean, can't lie, had it in the back of my head that one day we could be there. I've always believed it. To actually be here now, it's really surreal, and for that reason, 2023 will always be a memorable year for us all, definitely. But the highlight's Everton away, because that was the first win in the top flight, and it's the first step to showing that we are where we belong.
Yeah, no,
That's for me.
absolutely fair enough. Yeah, the highlight for me is that Sunderland night. If one person embodies 2023 at Luton Town Football Club, it's Thomas Allen Lockyer. For so many reasons. The impeccable performances on the pitch, the power, the presence, the bravery, the aggression, everything that he stands for. To recover once from what happened, to unfortunately go through it again, and we're hopeful that 2024 brings great times for him. Of course we are. To be the man to send us to Wembley, there's no Premier League without Tom Lockyer, and the noise when that ball hit the back of the net was spine-tingling. I mean, when Chong scored against Liverpool, it was similar, but there was something about that Sunderland night. Rob called for the noise, didn't he? He got it. It's the first time that I've been a Luton fan that you got bog off on drinks before the game started. That's how big it was, and that also helped it be a special memory.
Thanks, lads.
But you knew where I sit in the Kenilworth end. As soon as the ball left Doughty's head, you saw the run that Tom Lockyer was making, and you knew ball and head were going to combine, and you knew where it was going. You just knew it was written in the stars that Lockyer would do that, having been given the captaincy and everything else. And that's what I go to football for, that noise, that energy, that intimidation, that brilliant night. And I'll always remember that second leg home game, particularly because it was such the exact opposite, stark contrast to a year previous at Huddersfield. To have had our moment, which we should have had at Huddersfield, but we had 12 months later, was brilliant. Don't get me wrong, Wembley was magic. None of us will ever forget Wembley. If you're at Wembley, you'll never ever forget it, and you probably won't if you're at places like Wardown Park watching it, or even just watching it at home on television. That will always hold a place in my heart. But yeah, that night against Sunderland was everything that was so great about this club, and one man in particular.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. He embodies it. Rob said it, didn't he, a couple of weeks ago? He embodies everything about Luton Town Football Club, and his journey's been similar to Luton's. So there's still that really tight connection between the fans and the players. Not just Tom as well. A whole host of them, maybe even all of them. Probably, I think you can argue the case. So yeah, that night, the Watford night, the playoff. I absolutely refuse to separate any of them. In terms of even the Liverpool, that goal for 10 minutes or whatever it was, that the 1-0 up against Liverpool and that noise, it's just all been absolutely wonderful. And I think the good thing is that, even though it was the slow start of the Premier League in terms of getting into it and getting used to it, we're coming to this point and we're talking ahead of a game where Luton are on the up and looking towards making that a great end to 2023, but also once you get into 2024, I think the belief around the place is just sky high. I mean, nobody else has given Luton a chance, but everybody here thought we've got a perfectly fantastic chance of keeping in this league.
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, that is for sure. And let us know your highlight of 2023. Of course, it's going to be Wembley for most people. We understand that. But if you've got a second highlight, let us have it. Can't get enough of memories of 2023. As I say, we'll remember this 12 months for a long, long, long time to come. That's it for this episode of the podcast. Thanks to James and to Dan for their views and for joining me on this episode. Thanks, as always, to the Hightown Club for hosting our studio and set. Thanks to Sean Grant and the Wolfgang for our intro music. And thanks also to Ed Smith Creative for all the designs that you see on our set. Do like, subscribe, share, everything else that you can do to make the podcast bigger. Not only will you find out exactly when our Chelsea review podcast drops, but you'll also do so much for our numbers that can get our sort of get us out there a lot more and entice us to bigger and better guests, which will be great for us and great for you too. Finally, before we go, I'd like to wish every single Luton fan out there a very, very happy new year. Hopefully 2024, if it's even half as good as 2023, it's going to be fantastic on the pitch. Hopefully it's the year that Luton Town survive in the Premier League and prove them all wrong and go for a second season in the top flight. Have a great new year, however it is that you're celebrating it. Hopefully we've got 3 points against Chelsea to aid with those celebrations. And until next time, come on, you Atters.
Can you believe it? We are Premier League! Yes!
I love this town. I love this town. I love this town. You know what I love about this town is actually you. Everyone in it has got this massive soul.